first thing that we'll focus on is actually the equipment, which I sort of alluded to there. So since you're starting bare bones, what do you need to kind of fill the space? Like how are you approaching this?
Well, like you said, you literally need everything,
yeah.
Which sometimes people don't even necessarily think about, you know,
Right.
and it doesn't necessarily mean that this blank space or backyard wedding is going to be less expensive, because you have to bring in so many things. So, I mean, even the basics, like we're talking tables, those aren't going to be there. Chairs. If you're getting married on a grassy area, you're going to need to bring in a dance floor or possibly flooring that has to go down to make it even.
Right.
You may have to, replant sod or even out your backyard so that it doesn't have, dips in it that people are tripping over.
Yeah.
You're going to need a bar.
Obviously.
Right.
That's the first thing. To order.
That's the first thing to think about.
Absolutely.
And whether that's just tables with a linen or,
Like what kind of bar are we talking about? Like,
yeah.
Like the full boat, right?
Yeah, it could be anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the cool thing about a blank space. You might have a venue that has like a built-in bar that's beautiful, but maybe you don't love it. So this way you can really bring in like any type of bar. So literally like all of those just kind of basic things that you find in a traditional venue have to come in when you're working with a blank space.
Sure. And then, I mean, at the end of the day, you don't want your wedding to turn into Fire Festival. That would be bad. That, no. You don't want to sell everybody this beautiful wedding and then you come out and it's just a free for all. Yeah.
And you got to think about like some of those like small things too. And I know we're going to talk on some of this, but like even some of the things like maybe you're in your backyard and it's the summer, like, are there a ton of mosquitoes? Do you need to think about like spraying for mosquitoes and having off spray, or maybe it's going to get colder and be, chilly and you might need to give people shawls or something to keep warm. Or maybe all of your friends are going to wear heels and it's all grass. So maybe you need to provide flip-flops or those little heel stoppers. So like things like that you have to think through. Like you really have to kind of think through your guest experience in addition to kind of the basics that you're bringing in.
Yeah. No, it sounds like
I'm probably jumping ahead on you, but
you probably are, but that's okay. So what other unusual rentals, would you need besides obviously the tables and chairs?
Yeah. So
and the bar.
So like logistically, like you were saying, there's not going to be things that exist in a traditional venue. So that's going to be things like bathrooms. You're going to have to bring bathrooms in.
There's some cool ones out there, though.
There's some really cool ones. I mean, very, very fancy bathrooms on wheels.
Fancier than our bathroom.
Yeah. Fancier than, yeah. So, I mean, definitely like that's something you have to think about. If you're doing a backyard or like an outside blank space, you need to think about a tent. You can not rely on the fact that it's going to be the most perfect day ever. I'm
pretty sure it's going to be.
Even if it doesn't rain, like we're talking like if people are going to be outside for hours, it's going to be hot under the sun. They're going to be, getting sunburned. So that's gonna be another weird thing you have to think about is like sunscreen.
Yeah.
So you want to think about that. In addition to your guests, you need to think about like your vendor team. So like there's no kitchen for your caterer to cook from. So they're going to have to bring that in. So what does that mean? You're probably going to need a tent for them. You're going to need tables. You're going to need equipment. That's something you're going to want to work with a bustld vetted caterer who has experience working in non-traditional venues that don't have like a regular kitchen.
Right.
I mean, there's not even like a refrigerator or an ice machine.
Right.
So you're going to have to think about like all of that has to come in. You have to bring enough ice for keeping everything cool, for your drinks, for keeping your bar cool. So those are things that you really, need to think about as well. And then lighting. So if you're in your backyard, you probably, and you have a big enough backyard to support 150 person guest count, you probably don't have a ton of lighting out there.
I'm pretty sure you could just run like a long extension cord. I'm sure you won't blow a fuse at all. No.
So lighting, and that's going to be lighting from where guests are parking, or if you have a valet or something, you're going to need lighting from that location
Sure.
to the ceremony location if it's going to be getting dark, to your reception location, to your bathrooms.
Right.
Your caterers are going to need lights. So you're going to really need under the tent. You're going to need to think about like all the places that you're going to need to bring in lighting as well.
Yeah. So what other sort of, to that point, what other electrical needs are there besides just lighting?
Yeah. So obviously your lighting has to plug into something. So you're going to need generators, most
Sure.
likely. If you're going to be in a backyard.
Are those loud?
They can be, yeah. So you're going to have to make sure that they are far enough away from from your guests, which means you're going to need, extra power cords and things like that. Now, if you're in a more traditional blank space than a backyard, some of these things may not apply. They might have bathrooms or lighting,
Right.
But especially if you're in a backyard or under a tent or like a venue you were just talking about, you're going to need generators to power all of this.
Yeah.
And in addition to the lighting, you're going to have to power your DJ or your band. If you have uplights or photo booth that needs power, and then your caterer again is going to need power. And then thinking through too, like, does your photographer need a place to plug in, throughout the night? Is there any power needs for any of your other vendors as well?
Right.
You're going to want to talk with them and make sure you get enough power from a generator, that you're not blowing fuses or
And if we're talking,
running out of power.
And if we're talking July in the South, I mean, we're under our tent, we're probably going to want like those Arctic blast giant things that they put like on the sidelines of football games.
Right, exactly.
Like it's just blowing cold air.
Exactly,
Yeah.
or fans or
I'm sure
something.
that takes up a lot of electricity.
Something to keep your people cool.
So kind of segueing then from there, what sort of things should you prepare for should in the off chance there's inclement weather?
Yeah. So like we mentioned, I mean, you really want to have a tent if you're planning a backyard wedding. If you're like, hey, I don't necessarily know if I want to get, have my reception under a tent or get married under a tent, you're still going to want to put a backup tent on reserve because you have no backup option other than a tent. So if it does rain, you need to think through that.
I mean, and tents can look really, really beautiful.
Oh my
too.
gosh,
Like it's
so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so beautiful. Now that's an investment too. Drapery and lighting under a
Chandeliers.
Chandelier.
Yeah.
It's not cheap.
Yeah.
Or, if you have a backup indoor space, maybe you have a huge house that is attached and can support your guest count, or maybe you're at a more, traditional blank space in the sense of like, maybe you're at like a museum or something that has an indoor option. But you want to make sure you think about that before you commit to your venue selection, and make sure you account for that in your budget.